I never thought it would come to this. Standing in my own kitchen, the heart of a home I'd built brick by brick, feeling like a stranger. For 10 years, I'd poured my soul into raising my grandchildren, Lily and Ethan, while my daughter, Sarah, chased her ambitions across state lines. I didn't mind. I loved them like they were my own. Maybe more, because they were the second chance I never got with Sarah. But when she came back, her words cut deeper than any knife. You're too slow, Mom. They need someone younger, sharper. Too slow. The words echoed in my mind. A cruel verdict on a decade of sacrifice. So I made a choice, one that would unravel everything. I sold it all. The house, the land, the memories. I sold it to teach her a lesson, to reclaim the justice I deserved. But as I sit here now, pen trembling in my hand, I wonder if I've gone too far. If vengeance has cost me the very family I fought for. The morning it all began was ordinary. The kind of day you don't expect to change your life. I was up at dawn, kneading dough for the biscuits Lily loved, the ones with the golden crust she'd sneak before breakfast. Ethan was sprawled on the living room rug, sketching superheroes in his notebook, humming a tune I didn't recognize. The house smelled of coffee and cinnamon, a warmth that had always grounded us. I'd raised them here since they were toddlers, after Sarah left for her big break in Chicago. She'd promised it would only be a year, maybe 2, but years stretched into a decade. I didn't complain. I filled their lunchboxes, braided Lily's hair, cheered at Ethan's soccer games. I was their constant, their home. Sarah sent money, called occasionally, but it was me who wiped their tears and tucked them in. When Sarah's car pulled into the driveway that spring morning, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she was back for good. Maybe we could be a family again. She looked different, sharper. Somehow. In her tailored blazer and sleek haircut. The kids ran to her. All hugs and squeals. But her smile was tight. Her eyes distant. Over dinner, she dropped the bombshell. I'm taking them with me, she said, fork hovering over her untouched plate. I've got a new job, a better life for them. They need structure. Mom, you've done enough. Enough. The word stung, but I nodded, swallowing the hurt. I thought she'd at least let me stay in their lives. I was wrong. Days later, she sat me down, her voice cold as she laid out her plan. They're falling behind, she said. Lily's grades aren't great, and Ethan's too distracted. You're not keeping up, Mom. You're too slow. Too slow. It wasn't just criticism, it was dismissal, a rejection of everything I'd given. I looked at her, my only child, and saw a stranger. The girl I'd raised was gone, replaced by someone who saw me as a burden, an outdated piece of furniture to be replaced. That night, alone in my room, I made a decision. If she thought I was nothing, I'd show her what nothing felt like. I'd sell the house, the one I'd inherited from my own mother, the one filled with our family's history, and let her feel the weight of losing it. The idea took root like a weed, growing wild and unstoppable. I contacted a realtor the next morning, a brisk woman named Clara who didn't ask too many questions. The house was old but valuable, sitting on acres of land that developers had been eyeing for years. I didn't tell Sarah. I didn't tell the kids. I just signed the papers, my hands steady even as my heart raced. The sale was quick, too quick. Maybe. A developer offered cash, and within weeks, the deal was done. I packed up the kids' things, keeping only what I could carry. The rest, the furniture, the photo albums, the recipe box with my mother's handwriting I left behind. Let Sarah deal with the emptiness. When Sarah found out, her fury was a storm. She stormed into the house, now half-packed, her face red with rage. "How could you do this?" she screamed, her voice echoing off the bare walls. This was their home. You had no right. I stood my ground, my voice calm but sharp. You said I was too slow, Sarah. You said I wasn't enough. So I let it go? All of it. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw fear behind her anger. She hadn't expected me to fight back. But I wasn't done. I'd spent 10 years giving, and now I was taking back what was mine, me dignity, my power, my justice. The kids were caught in the middle, their faces pale as they watched us tear into each other. Lily clung to Ethan, her eyes brimming with tears. "Why are you fighting?" she whispered, and my heart cracked. This wasn't what I wanted. I'd meant to hurt Sarah, not them. But the plan was in motion, and there was no turning back. The house was gone, the money in my account, and Sarah was left with nothing but her pride. I thought it would feel good, like victory. Instead, it felt hollow. I'd won, but at what cost? The question haunted me as I moved into a small apartment across town, the kids' voices still ringing in my ears. I told myself it was justice, that Sarah deserved it for throwing me away. But late at night, when the silence was too loud, I wondered if I'd become the villain in my own story. I'd wanted to teach her a lesson, but I'd uprooted the kids, torn apart the only home they'd known. I started writing letters to them, long ones I never sent, pouring out my regrets. I wanted to explain, to make them understand why I'd done it. But how do you explain revenge to a child? How do you tell them you burned down their world to prove a point? I didn't have answers, only guilt that grew heavier with each passing day. Sarah didn't speak to me for weeks. The kids called sometimes, their voices hesitant, like they were afraid of saying the wrong thing. I tried to keep things light, asking about school, their friends, but the distance was palpable. I'd created a chasm, and I didn't know how to bridge it. Then one day, Sarah showed up at my door, unannounced. She looked tired, her sharp edges softened by exhaustion. "We need to talk," she said, and I braced myself for another fight. But she didn't yell. She sat down, her hands clasped tightly, and started to cry. "I didn't mean it, Mom," she said. "I didn't mean to hurt you." For the first time in years, I saw my daughter not the stranger, but the girl I'd raised. And I realized that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to fix this. But it would take more than words. It would take everything I had left. Sarah's tears caught me off guard, like a sudden rain after years of drought. I'd spent so long building walls against her, armoring myself with resentment, that seeing her vulnerable cracked something inside me. I wanted to reach out, to pull her close like I did when she was small, but my hands stayed frozen on the armrests of my chair. The apartment felt too small for this moment, its bare walls and thrift store furniture a stark contrast to the home we'd lost. I didn't know what I was saying. She continued, her voice breaking. "I was scared, Mom. Scared I'd failed them. I thought taking them away would fix everything." Her words hung between us, heavy with the weight of years unspoken. I wanted to believe her, but the sting of too slow still burned. a wound that hadn't healed. I poured us coffee, the cheap kind that tasted more like regret than comfort. And we sat in silence for a while. The kids were at a friend's house, she said, giving us time to talk. I didn't know where to start. How do you rebuild a bridge you've burned to ash? Why didn't you trust me? I finally asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. 10 years. Sarah. I gave them everything. And you made me feel like nothing. She flinched, her hands tightening around her mug. I was wrong, she said. I saw their report cards, their messy rooms, and I panicked. I thought it was my fault for leaving, but I took it out on you. It was the closest she'd ever come to an apology. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. I told her about the sale, how it felt like the only way to reclaim my worth. Her eyes widened as I described signing the papers, watching the realtor's pen move across the contract like a guillotine. You didn't just sell the house, she said, her voice trembling. You sold our history. Grandma's recipes, Dad's old records, the swing in the backyard where I used to dream. I wanted to argue, to tell her she'd left me no choice. But the truth was, I hadn't thought about those things. I'd been so consumed by my need for justice that I'd erased pieces of us all. The realization hit like a punch, stealing my breath. I'd thought I was punishing her, but I'd punished the kids, too. And myself. We talked for hours, peeling back layers of hurt. She told me about Chicago, how the pressure of her job had eaten away at her, how she'd felt like a failure every time she missed a school play or a birthday. I told her about the nights I'd stayed up worrying about her, wondering if I'd failed as a mother. It was raw, messy, like digging through broken glass to find something whole. By the time she left, we hadn't fixed anything, but we'd started. She hugged me before she went. A quick, awkward embrace that felt like a promise. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I couldn't keep running from it. The next few weeks were a blur of small steps. Sarah brought the kids over on weekends, and we'd bake together, the kitchen filling with the smell of cinnamon again. Lily was quieter now, her chatter replaced by cautious glances. But Ethan still drew his superheroes, leaving them on my fridge like offerings. I tried to be the grandmother they remembered, but the weight of what I'd done lingered. I started looking for ways to make it right, to give them back what I'd taken. The money from the sale was still in my account, untouched. I'd planned to use it for myself, maybe travel, maybe start over. But now I saw it differently. It wasn't just money, it was a chance to rebuild. I called Clara, the realtor, and asked about buying a new place. Something smaller, but ours. She was skeptical but promised to look. Meanwhile, I started writing to Sarah. Not letters I'd never sent, but real ones. Short and honest. I told her I was sorry, that I'd let my anger blind me. She didn't respond at first. But one day, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Her handwriting shaky, but clear. I'm sorry too, Mom. Let's try again. It wasn't forgiveness. Not fully. But it was a start. I tucked the letter into the recipe box I'd salvaged. The one thing I hadn't left behind. It felt like a talisman. A reminder of what we could still be. The kids started opening up again. Slowly. One afternoon, Lily asked why I'd sold the house. Her voice was small, but her eyes were sharp, searching for truth. I took a deep breath and told her as much as I could without breaking her heart. I was hurt. I said, and sometimes, when people are hurt, They do things they regret. But I'm trying to fix it. She nodded, her small hand slipping into mine. Ethan didn't ask questions, but he drew me a pictorial superhero with gray hair and a cape, labeled Grandma. I cried when I saw it, hiding my tears behind a smile. They were giving me a chance, and I wouldn't waste it. Clara found a house, a modest 2-story on the edge of town. It wasn't the sprawling home we'd lost, but it had a big kitchen and a yard for the kids to play in. I used the sale money to put in an offer, my heart pounding as I signed the papers. This time, I told Sarah everything, laying out my plan to make a new home for us all. She was quiet for a long time, then nodded. "Let's do it together," she said. It was the first time we'd agreed on anything in years. We started packing, sorting through what was left of our old life. The recipe box came with us, its wooden lid worn but sturdy, a symbol of what we were trying to rebuild. As we moved into the new house, I felt the weight of the past start to lift. It wasn't perfect, there were still arguments, still moments when Sarah's sharp edges cut too deep, or when my guilt made me snap. But we were trying. The kids ran through the yard, their laughter echoing like it used to. Sarah helped me paint the kitchen, her hand steady as she rolled on the soft yellow I'd chosen. We didn't talk about the sale or the fight, but we didn't need to. The house was a fresh start, a canvas for new memories. I didn't know if we'd ever fully heal, but for the first time, I believed we could try. And that was enough. The new house smelled of fresh paint and possibility, but it wasn't home yet. The walls were bare. The floors echoed under our footsteps, and every box we unpacked felt like a question. Could we rebuild what we'd lost? I threw myself into making the place ours, hanging curtains, planting herbs in the kitchen window, anything to fill the emptiness. Sarah was there most days, helping with the move. But there was still a distance between us, a hesitation in her movements, like she was waiting for me to hurt her again. I couldn't blame her. I'd sold the house out of spite, and though I'd meant to strike at her, I'd wounded us all. The kids, though they were the glue. Lily's laughter when we baked cookies. Ethan's endless sketches taped to the fridge, they gave me hope. One evening, as we sat around the new dining table, Sarah brought up the past. "Why didn't you talk to me first?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with pain. "Before you sold it. Why didn't you tell me how you felt?" I stared at my plate, the mashed potatoes growing cold. I'd asked myself the same question 100 times. I was angry. I said finally, "I felt like you'd erased me, Sarah. Like I was just a placeholder until you were ready to be their mom again." She looked away, her jaw tight. "I didn't mean to make you feel that way," she said. "But you didn't give me a chance to fix it. You just burned it all down." Her words hit hard, but they were true. I'd chosen revenge over repair, and now we were picking up the pieces. The kids were upstairs, their voices drifting down as they argued over a board game. I listened to them, my heart aching for the simplicity of those early years when a hug could fix anything. "I'm sorry," I said, the words heavy but necessary. "I thought I was teaching you a lesson, but I hurt them instead." "I hurt us." Sarah nodded, her eyes glistening. "I'm sorry too," she said. "I shouldn't have said those things. I was scared, Mom. Scared I wasn't enough for them." We sat there, two women who'd let fear and pride tear us apart, trying to find our way back. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. Over the next few months, We settled into a rhythm. Sarah started spending more time at the house. Not just dropping off the kids, but staying for dinner. Helping with homework. We didn't talk about the sale much, but it lingered like a shadow, surfacing in quiet moments. One day, while unpacking a box of old photos, Lily found a picture of the old house. The swing in the backyard frozen in time. "I miss it," she said, her voice small. I knelt beside her, my throat tight. "I know, sweetheart," I said, "but we're making new memories here. Better ones." She looked at me, her eyes searching, and nodded. I hoped she believed me. I was trying to believe it myself. Ethan was quieter, his drawings darker now, full of stormy skies and broken buildings. I worried about him, but when I asked, he'd just shrug and say, "I'm fine, Grandma." One afternoon, I found him in the backyard, sketching the new house. "It's not the same," he said, not looking up. "But it's okay. You're here." His words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the guilt that threatened to drown me. I sat beside him, watching his pencil move, and realized that redemption wasn't a single moment, it was 1,000 small ones, built day by day. Sarah and I started talking more, not just about the kids, but about us. She told me about her life in Chicago, the late nights, the pressure to prove herself. I told her about the loneliness of those 10 years, the way I'd clung to the kids to fill the void she'd left. It wasn't all healed, there were still sharp edges. Moments when we'd snap at each other, old wounds flaring. But we were trying. One night, she brought over a bottle of wine, and we sat on the porch, the kids asleep inside. "I want to be better," she said, her voice soft. "For them. For you." I reached for her hand, and for the first time in years, she didn't pull away. The house started to feel like home. We hung pictures, planted a garden, even built a new swing in the backyard. The kids helped, their laughter filling the air as we worked. But the recipe box was my anchor. Its worn wood a reminder of what we'd lost and what we were rebuilding. I started teaching Lily my mother's recipes, the ones Sarah had loved as a child. One day, as we rolled out dough for biscuits, Sarah joined us, her hands hesitant but eager. "I remember this," she said, a smile breaking through. It was a small moment, but it felt like a victory, a step toward redemption. I still carried the weight of what I'd done, but it was lighter now, shared between us. Sarah wasn't perfect, she was still sharp sometimes, still quick to judge, but she was trying, too. We were both learning to forgive, not just each other, but ourselves. The kids were the reason we kept going, their trust a fragile gift we couldn't afford to break again. As winter approached, the house glowed with warmth, the kitchen filled with the smell of baking bread. It wasn't the old house, but it was ours. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was home. Winter came early that year, wrapping the new house in a quiet blanket of snow. The kids loved it, bundling up to build snowmen in the yard, their laughter cutting through the cold. I watched them from the kitchen window, a mug of tea warming my hands, and felt a flicker of peace. But peace was fragile, and the past had a way of creeping back. Sarah was spending more time with us, but there were still moments when her old sharpness surfaced, a reminder of the chasm we were trying to bridge. One evening, as we decorated the Christmas tree, she snapped at Lily for dropping an ornament. The room went silent, the broken glass glittering on the floor like our fractured trust. I saw the hurt in Lily's eyes, and I knew we weren't as healed as I'd hoped. I pulled Sarah aside later, my voice low. "You can't keep doing that," I said. "They're trying to trust you again." "So am I." She looked away, her jaw tight, but nodded. "I know," she said. "It's just hard. I'm not used to this." I understood, more than I wanted to admit. Being a mother, a grandmother, wasn't just love, it was patience, sacrifice, the constant choice to be better. I'd failed at that when I sold the house, and Sarah was failing now in her own way. But we were both learning, stumbling towards something better. The kids were the heart of it all. Ethan started opening up more, his drawings brighter, full of color again. One day, he showed me a sketch of the new house, a superhero flying above it, her cape trailing like a comet. "It's you, Grandma," he said, shy but proud. I hugged him, my throat tight, and taped the drawing to the fridge next to Lily's latest report card, a B+ in math. A small victory we celebrated with ice cream. Lily was quieter, still carrying the weight of the old house. But she'd started writing stories, filling notebooks with tales of adventure and loss. I read them when she let me, seeing pieces of our story in her words. And it broke my heart and mended it at the same time. Sarah and I kept talking, peeling back more layers. She told me about the guilt she carried, the nights she'd lain awake in Chicago, wondering if she'd abandoned her kids. I told her about the anger I'd buried, how her words had made me feel invisible. It wasn't easy. Sometimes we'd argue, voices rising until one of us walked away. But we always came back. One night, she brought over a photo album she'd salvaged from the old house, one I thought was gone forever. We sat on the couch, the kids asleep upstairs, and flipped through it, laughing and crying over memories. "I should have fought harder to keep this," she said, touching a picture of us baking together when she was Lily's age. "We're fighting now," I said, and she smiled. A real one this time. I started thinking about the future. Not just the house, but what we could be as a family. The money from the sale was mostly gone, spent on the new place. But I had enough left to do something meaningful. I talked to Sarah about starting a college fund for the kids, a way to give them a future we could all be proud of. She agreed, and we sat down together to plan it. Spreadsheets and calculators spread across the kitchen table. It felt like a partnership, something we hadn't had in years. The kids didn't know yet, but I imagined telling them one day, watching their faces light up with possibility. The house was coming alive, filled with small moments that felt like home. We baked cookies for the neighbors, hung fairy lights in the kids' rooms, even started a tradition of movie nights on Fridays. But the recipe box was still my touchstone. One afternoon, Lily asked to make my mother's apple pie, and Sarah joined us, her hands steady as she peeled apples. We worked in silence at first, the rhythm of our movements a kind of forgiveness. When the pie came out of the oven, golden and fragrant, Lily grinned. "It's like the old house," she said, and Sarah and I exchanged a look, a shared understanding that we were building something new. There were still hard days. Sarah's temper flared sometimes, and my guilt still woke me at night. But we were moving forward, one step at a time. The kids were thriving, their laughter filling the house, and I started to believe we could be whole again. I wrote more letters, not just to Sarah, but to myself, promising to be better, to choose love over anger. I didn't know if we'd ever fully heal the wounds of the past, but I knew we were trying. And as the snow fell outside, blanketing the world in quiet, I felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. This was our home, flawed but ours, and we were fighting to keep it. Spring arrived, softening the edges of the world with green. The new house felt more like home now, its walls no longer strangers. The kids ran through the yard, chasing each other with water guns, their laughter a melody I clung to. Sarah was around more, her presence less tentative, though we still tiptoed around each other at times. The sale of the old house lingered like a bruise, fading but not gone. I'd catch Sarah staring out the window sometimes, her face unreadable, and I wondered if she was thinking of the swing in the old backyard, the one we hadn't rebuilt yet. I wanted to ask, but some things were still too raw to touch. One morning, Lily came to me with a question that stopped me cold. "Grandma, do you hate Mom?" she asked, her eyes wide and searching. We were in the kitchen, rolling out dough for cinnamon rolls, the air sweet with sugar. I set down the rolling pin, my hands trembling. "No, sweetheart," I said, choosing my words carefully. I was angry, and I made a big mistake. But I could never hate her. She's my daughter, just like you're hers. Lily nodded, but her frown told me she wasn't convinced. I realized then how much the kids had seen, how much they'd carried. My revenge hadn't just hurt Sarah, it had shaken their trust in us both. I started paying closer attention to them, watching for cracks I'd missed. Ethan was drawing again, but his superheroes were different now. Their capes tattered, their faces weary. I asked him about it one afternoon, sitting on the porch with lemonade. "They're tired," he said, his voice soft. "Like us." I hugged him, promising myself I'd do better. I started spending more time with them, not just baking or helping with homework, but listening, really listening. Lily told me about her stories, how she wrote about a girl who lost her home but found a new one. I saw myself in her words, and it hurt, but it also gave me hope. Sarah and I kept working on our relationship, though it wasn't always smooth. One night, we argued over something small, dishes left in the sink. I think and it spiraled into everything we hadn't said. "You act like you're the only one who sacrificed," she snapped, her eyes flashing. I was trying to build a life for them. I fired back, my voice shaking. "And I was the one who raised them while you were gone." The kids were upstairs, but I knew they could hear, and that stopped us. We sat down, exhausted, and started talking instead of yelling. It was slow, painful, but necessary. We were learning to fight without destroying each other. The recipe box became our ritual, a way to connect. We'd pull out a recipe, mother's cornbread, her peach cobbler, and cook together. The three of us. Sometimes four when Ethan joined in. Sarah started sharing her own recipes, ones she'd learned in Chicago, and it felt like we were weaving new memories into the old. One day, Lily wrote a recipe of her own, a messy scrawl for Grandma's happy cookies, and taped it inside the box. "It's for when we're all together," she said, and I had to turn away to hide my tears. Those moments were our redemption, small but real, proof that we could rebuild. I started thinking about the future again, not just for the kids, but for all of us. Sarah was settling into a new job closer to home, one that didn't demand her soul. She was softer now, less guarded, and I saw glimpses of the girl I'd raised. We talked about the college fund, adding to it little by little, and about maybe taking a family trip, something to mark a new beginning. The idea scared me. Could we really be a family again? But it also felt right. I wanted the kids to grow up knowing we'd fought for them, not just against each other. The house was alive now, filled with the chaos of family. We had game nights, arguments over who got the last slice of pie, moments when Sarah and I would catch each other's eye and smile, knowing we were getting there. But the past wasn't gone. One night, Ethan asked about the old house, his voice hesitant. "Why did you sell it, Grandma?" he said, and I felt Sarah tense beside me. I told him the truth, or as much as he could understand. I was hurt, and I made a choice I regret. I said, "But we're here now, and we're making it better." He nodded, his small hand in mine, and I prayed he'd forgive me one day. As spring turned to summer, I felt a shift. The house wasn't just a place Anna Marie, it was ours, flaws and all. We planted a tree in the yard, a small one that would grow with the kids. Sarah and I stood together, watching them water it, and I felt something settle inside me. We weren't perfect, but we were family, and that was worth everything. Summer brought heat and long days, the kind that stretched time until it felt endless. The kids were out of school, filling the house with noise and energy, their footsteps a constant rhythm. Sarah was around more, her new job giving her flexibility she hadn't had in years. We were finding a balance, a way to be together without stepping on each other's scars. But the past wasn't done with us. One afternoon, while cleaning out the attic, I found a box of old letters, ones I'd written to Sarah during her years in Chicago. I'd never sent them, but they were full of love and worry, a record of the mother I'd tried to be. Reading them now, I felt a pang of regret, not just for selling the house, but for all the years we'd lost to silence. I showed the letters to Sarah one evening, after the kids were asleep. We sat in the living room, the fan humming softly, and I handed her the stack, my hands shaking. She read them in silence, her face unreadable, until tears started falling. "Why didn't you send these?" she asked, her voice thick. "I thought you didn't care," I said. "You were so far away, building your life, and I didn't want to burden you." She shook her head, wiping her eyes. "I needed to hear this, Mom. I needed to know you still loved me." It was a confession, raw and unguarded, and it broke something open between us. We talked until dawn, unraveling years of misunderstanding, promising to do better. The kids were thriving, but they still carried the weight of what we'd done. Lily's stories grew more complex, weaving tales of loss and redemption, and I saw our family in every line. Ethan's drawings were brighter, but he'd sometimes sketch the old house, its windows dark, like it was waiting for us to come back. I didn't know how to fix that, but I tried. We started a project together, building a tree house in the backyard, something new to replace what we'd lost. Sarah helped, her hands steady as she hammered nails, and the kids laughed as we argued over where to put the windows. It was messy, imperfect, but it was ours. One day, Sarah brought up the idea of therapy. For all of us. "We've got a lot to work through," she said, her voice cautious but firm. I hesitated. I'd never been one for airing my feelings to stranger, but I saw the sense in it. The kids deserved a space to process what had happened, and maybe Sarah and I needed it too. We found a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Ellis, who listened without judgment. Our first session was awkward, full of long silences, but it was a start. Lily talked about missing the old house. Ethan about feeling caught between us. Sarah and I admitted our failures. Our voices shaking but honest. It wasn't a cure, but it was a step. The recipe box stayed at the heart of our home. We'd pull it out on weekends, picking recipes that tied us to the past while we made new memories. One afternoon, Sarah suggested we add a new recipe, something that was ours alone. We spent hours experimenting, laughing as we burned the first batch of cookies, finally settling on a recipe for lemon bars that the kids dubbed Sunshine Squares. Lily wrote it down in her careful handwriting, taping it inside the box next to my mother's recipes. It felt like a blessing, a way to honor what we'd lost while building something new. We started planning for the future, not just the college fund, but bigger dreams. Sarah talked about opening a small bakery, using the recipes we'd saved. I offered to help, my savings from the sale a seed we could plant together. The kids loved the idea, already designing signs for Grandma's kitchen. It was a dream, but it felt possible, something to hold on to. We weren't just rebuilding a home, we were rebuilding a family, piece by piece. There were still hard moments. Sarah and I clashed sometimes, old habits creeping in. The kids would get quiet, sensing the tension, and I'd feel the guilt all over again. But we kept going, learning to apologize, to listen, to forgive. One night, Ethan drew a picture of us all in the treehouse, smiling under a bright sky. "This is us now," he said, and I held him close, my heart full. The past was still there, but it didn't define us anymore. We were writing a new story, one where redemption wasn't just a hope, but a reality we were building together. Fall painted the world in reds and golds, and the new house felt more like ours with each passing day. The treehouse was finished, a rickety but beloved structure where the kids spent hours, their laughter drifting through the open windows. Sarah was settling into her new rhythm, her job stable, her presence steady. We were finding our way, but the scars of the past still ached, especially when I saw the kids hesitate before hugging their mother. My choice to sell the house had left a mark, and though we were healing, some wounds took longer to fade. I carried that guilt, but I was learning to let it fuel my efforts to make things right. One evening, Lily came to me with a notebook, her stories spilling across the pages. "I wrote about you," she said, her voice shy. The story was about a grandmother who burned down a castle to save her family, only to realize they needed her more than the castle did. It was raw, full of pain and hope, and I cried as I read it, seeing myself through her eyes. "You're not mad, are you?" she asked, and I pulled her close. "No, sweetheart," I said. "I'm proud. You're telling our truth." Her words gave me courage, a reminder that redemption wasn't just about fixing the past, but about building a future the kids could believe in. Sarah and I kept going to therapy with Dr. Ellis, and it was starting to make a difference. We talked about the sale, about her absence, about the ways we'd failed each other. One session, Sarah admitted she'd felt abandoned when I stopped calling her in Chicago. "I thought you'd given up on me," she said, her voice breaking. I told her about the letters, how I'd written them but never sent them, afraid she didn't want to hear from me. Dr. Ellis listened, guiding us through the pain, helping us see each other's hurt. It wasn't easy, but it was honest, and that was enough for now. Ethan was opening up too, his drawings a window into his heart. One day, he showed me a sketch of the old house, But this time, it was surrounded by flowers. The windows bright. "It's how I remember it," he said, and I saw a flicker of forgiveness in his eyes. I started drawing with him. Simple things like trees and stars. And it became our way of talking without words. He'd tell me about school, his friends, the things that scared him. I listened, storing every word, determined to be the grandmother he needed. The recipe box was our anchor, a thread connecting us to the past and the present. We added more recipes: Sarah's lemon bars, Lily's happy cookies, even a chili recipe Ethan insisted on after a camping trip. One Sunday, we invited neighbors over for a potluck, the kitchen overflowing with food and laughter. Sarah was nervous, her hands fidgeting as she set out plates. But she smiled when people complimented her baking. I saw her relax, saw the kids beam with pride, and felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. We were becoming a family again, not just in private, but in the world. The bakery idea grew, taking shape in late-night conversations. Sarah found a small storefront in town, and we started crunching numbers, dreaming of a place that could be ours. I offered what was left of the sale money, and Sarah hesitated, her pride still a barrier. "It's not just for you," I said. "It's for them. For us." She nodded, and we shook on it. A partnership sealed with hope. The kids were thrilled, already planning to help on weekends. Their excitement a reminder of why we were fighting so hard. There were still setbacks. Sarah and I argued sometimes, our tempers flaring over small things that hid bigger ones. The kids would retreat, their trust fragile, and I'd lie awake, wondering if we'd ever fully heal. But we kept going, showing up for each other, for them. One night, Sarah stayed late, and we sat on the porch, the air cool and sharp. "I'm glad you're here, Mom," she said, her voice soft. I reached for her hand, and this time, she squeezed back. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. The bakery became our focus, a dream we could all hold on to. We spent weekends visiting the storefront, a small space with big windows that let in the morning light. Sarah was nervous but excited, sketching out plans for counters and display cases. The kids helped, their ideas wild but full of heart. Ethan wanted a superhero-themed corner, Lily a bookshelf for her stories. I saw the old Sarah in those moments, the one who dreamed big as a girl, and I felt a pride I hadn't known in years. But the past was never far away. One day, while cleaning the storefront, we found a photo tucked behind a shelf, a faded picture of the old house. It stopped us cold, a reminder of what we'd lost, and I saw Sarah's hands tremble as she held it. We didn't talk about it then, but that night, Sarah came to me, her eyes red. "I keep thinking about what you said," she told me, her voice low, "about feeling invisible. I made you feel that way, and I hate myself for it." I took her hand, my own eyes stinging. "I made mistakes too," I said. "I sold the house to hurt you, and I hurt them instead. We both messed up, Sarah. But we're here now." She nodded, and we sat in silence, the weight of our choices heavy but shared. It was a step toward forgiveness, not just for each other, but for ourselves. The kids were growing, their lives expanding beyond our little world. Lily joined the school newspaper, her stories finding a new audience, while Ethan started soccer again, his drawings now full of action and light. But they still carried the scars of the sale. One evening, Lily asked if we could visit the old house, just to see it. I hesitated, but Sarah agreed, and we drove there together. A quiet pilgrimage. The house was gone, replaced by a strip mall, its bright signs a stark contrast to the home we'd known. Lily cried, and Ethan held her hand, his face stoic. I felt the guilt rise again, but Sarah spoke first. "We can't go back," she said, her voice steady. "But we've got each other. That's what matters." It was simple, but it was enough. Therapy helped us navigate the rough patches. Dr. Ellis gave us tools to talk without hurting, to listen without judging. We started opening up more, not just about the sale, but about everything: the fears, the dreams, the things we'd buried. Sarah admitted she was scared of failing the kids again, of not being enough. I told her about my own fears, how I worried I'd never make up for what I'd done. The kids spoke too, their voices small but brave, and I saw how much they needed us to be whole. It was hard, but it was worth it. The recipe box stayed central, a symbol of our resilience. We added more recipes, each one a memory we were building together. One day, Sarah suggested we make a cookbook, a collection of our family's recipes to sell at the bakery. The kids loved the idea, and we spent evenings typing up recipes, laughing over my mother's quirky notes and Lily's misspelled additions. It felt like a legacy, a way to honor the past while moving forward. The bakery was coming together too, with a loan secured and renovations underway. We painted the walls a soft yellow, like the kitchen in the new house, and I felt a spark of hope every time I walked through the door. There were still moments of doubt. Sarah and I clashed over the bakery's budget, our tempers flaring until we walked away, cooling off before we hurt each other. The kids sensed it, their eyes wary, but we always came back, apologizing, trying again. One night, Ethan drew a picture of the bakery, all of us standing in front, smiling. "This is our new home," he said, and I felt a lump in my throat. He was right, not just about the bakery, but about us. We were building something new, something stronger, and we were doing it together. As the bakery's opening day approached, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. We were almost there, a family again, but the journey wasn't over. The past would always be part of us, but it didn't have to define us. We were learning to forgive, to love, to fight for each other. And that was enough. The bakery's opening was a whirlwind, a chaotic blend of nerves and joy. The storefront gleamed with fresh paint, the air thick with the scent of cinnamon and vanilla. Neighbors crowded in, their voices a warm hum, and the kids darted around, passing out samples with proud grins. Sarah was in her element, her smile bright as she greeted customers. But I saw the tension in her shoulders, the fear of failure lurking beneath. I felt it too. This was our chance to prove we could build something together, something lasting. The recipe box sat on the counter, its worn wood a quiet reminder of where we'd been and where we were going. The day wasn't perfect. A batch of cookies burned, and a customer complained about the coffee. But we laughed it off, Sarah and I exchanging a look that said we'd survived worse. The kids were the stars, Lily reading one of her stories to a small crowd, Ethan sketching caricatures for anyone who asked. By the end of the day, we were exhausted but happy, the till full and the future bright. That night, we sat in the empty bakery, eating leftover lemon bars and talking about what came next. "We did it," Sarah said, her voice soft with wonder. I nodded. My heart full. We did. But the past wasn't done with us. A week later, Sarah got a letter from the developer who'd bought the old house, offering to sell back a small piece of the land. It was a strange twist, a chance to reclaim something we'd lost. We drove to the site again, standing in the shadow of the strip mall, the kids quiet beside us. What do we do? Sarah asked, her voice uncertain. I thought about the house, the swing, the memories we'd buried. We don't need it, I said finally. We've got this now. I gestured to the kids, to her, to the life we were building. She nodded, and we walked away, leaving the past behind. Therapy kept us grounded, giving us space to process the opening, the letter, the weight of our choices. Dr. Ellis helped us see that healing wasn't linear. There were good days and bad moments when we'd slip back into old patterns. But we were getting better at catching ourselves, at apologizing, at moving forward. Lily started writing about the bakery, her stories full of hope now, while Ethan's drawings showed us as a team, stronger together. I saw their resilience, and it gave me strength to keep going, to keep fighting for us. The cookbook was coming along, a labor of love that brought us closer. We spent evenings testing recipes, arguing over which ones to include, laughing until our sides hurt. Sarah suggested we dedicate it to my mother, whose recipes had started it all, and I agreed, my eyes stinging. The kids added their own touches, Lily's stories, Ethan's illustrations, and it felt like a family project, a way to weave our past into our future. The bakery was thriving, too, with regular customers and a growing reputation. Sarah was finding her footing, her confidence growing with every sale. There were still challenges. Sarah and I argued sometimes, our voices sharp with old hurts. The kids would get quiet, their trust still fragile. But we'd work through it, talking it out, showing them we weren't giving up. One night, Lily asked if we'd ever fight like we did before. I looked at Sarah, then back at her. We might, I said honestly. But we'll always come back. We're family. She smiled, and I felt a weight lift. We were learning to be honest, to be real, and that was enough. As winter approached again, I felt a quiet certainty settle in. The bakery, the house, the cookbook, they were more than projects. They were proof that we could rebuild, that we could redeem the mistakes of the past. We weren't perfect, but we were together, and that was what mattered. The recipe box sat on the bakery counter, a symbol of our journey, and I knew we'd keep adding to it. One recipe, one memory, one day at a time. Winter returned, wrapping the world in quiet. The bakery was our haven now, its warm lights a beacon in the cold. Customers came and went, their faces familiar, their stories weaving into ours. Sarah was thriving, her confidence a quiet strength that reminded me of my mother. The kids were growing. Lily's stories published in the school paper, Ethan's drawings winning a local contest. I watched them, my heart full, knowing we'd come through the fire and were stronger for it. But the past still lingered, a soft ache that surfaced in quiet moments, reminding me of the house I'd sold, the family I'd nearly lost. One evening, Sarah suggested we hold a family meeting, something we hadn't done since the early days of the new house. We sat around the bakery's counter, the recipe box open between us, and talked about the future. Lily wanted to study writing. Ethan dreamed of art school. And Sarah shared her plans to expand the bakery, maybe open a second location. I listened, my heart swelling with pride, and offered my own dream to keep teaching them my mother's recipes, to keep our family's story alive. We agreed to keep the college fund growing, to save for their dreams, and it felt like a promise we'd all keep. The cookbook was nearly finished, a thick stack of pages filled with recipes and memories. We decided to self-publish it, a small run to sell at the bakery, and the kids threw themselves into the project, designing the cover, proofreading Lily's stories. When the first copy arrived, we gathered in the kitchen, flipping through it with awe. Sarah's dedication to my mother brought tears to my eyes, and Ethan's illustrations made us laugh. It was more than a book, it was us. Our journey. Our redemption. We sold out the first batch in a week, and Sarah started talking about a reprint, maybe even a bigger distribution. Therapy was still part of our lives, though less frequent now. Dr. Ellis helped us navigate the small conflicts, the moments when Sarah's temper or my guilt flared. We were better at talking now, at listening, at forgiving. The kids were more open too, their trust growing with every honest conversation. One day, Ethan asked if we could rebuild the swing from the old house. We spent a weekend on it, Sarah and I arguing over the design, the kids laughing as we fumbled with tools. When it was done, they swung high, their voices filling the air, and I felt a piece of the past settle into place. The bakery was our heart, but the house was our home. We filled it with new traditions: Sunday brunches, game nights, quiet evenings when we just talk. Sarah and I still clash sometimes, but we'd learned to step back, to breathe, to choose love over anger. The kids noticed, their smiles brighter, their hugs tighter. One night, Lily gave me a story she'd written, a tale of a family that lost everything but found each other. "It's us," she said, and I held her close, my heart full. She was right, we'd found each other, and we weren't letting go. As the year ended, we stood together in the bakery, decorating for the holidays. The recipe box sat on the counter, its lid open, new recipes tucked inside. I looked at Sarah, at the kids, at the life we'd built, and felt a peace I hadn't known in years. I'd sold the house out of anger, seeking justice, but what I'd found was something better: redemption, love, a family made whole. We weren't perfect, but we were together, and that was enough. The future stretched out before us, full of possibility, and I knew we'd face it as one. The recipe box would keep our story, and we'd keep adding to it. One day, one memory, one love at a time.